Hi students, I'm so excited to talk to you about Earth and space today. And as you can tell from the video you just watched, I participated in the Name the Space Shuttle program for the last NASA Space Shuttle when I was in the 6th grade. And I didn't win. Endeavour was the name chosen. But since then, I've always had a love for everything NASA, space, and science related. And that's kind of why I'm a science teacher today. So are you ready for this little adventure? It's gonna take a little bit of time, but if you hang with me, I know you're gonna learn a lot of interesting facts about the Earth, the solar system, and the galaxy in which we live. Are you ready? Here we go. Okay, greater than 100 kilometers. If you go greater than 100 kilometers from the surface of the Earth, you are officially in space. The first manned space program was Project Mercury, and that guy waving in the picture right there, that is the first American in space, Alan Shepard. The second manned space program was the Gemini astronauts. Gemini served as a bridge between the Mercury and the Apollo programs. They had 10 crewed missions, and it carried astronauts to Earth's orbit. And the first astronaut to reach Earth's orbit was John Glenn. The Apollo missions, their main goal was to get a man to the lunar surface. President Kennedy gave an awesome speech, and you should look it up and read the whole thing because it's awesome. But in it, he said these words: "No nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." I love President Kennedy's speech, and especially that line. We as Americans don't do things that because they're easy. We challenge ourselves and we do things that are hard. And Americans at the time got behind John F. Kennedy, and we landed several Americans on the lunar surface. USA! USA! We landed on the moon! We didn't land on the moon just one time. We landed 6 times, and each of those 6 times, 2 astronauts from the United States of America walked on the surface of the moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Eugene Cernan, Harrison Schmitt, Charles Duke, Pete Conrad, Alan Bean, John Young, Edgar Mitchell, James Irwin, Alan Shepard, and David Scott. We landed on the moon 6 times. We put 6 American flags on the moon, and each time we landed, 2 Americans walked on the surface. Norm Chafee started working at NASA in 1961. The rocket that I'm holding in that upper right-hand picture is the rocket that helped the Apollo capsule maneuver to the lunar surface. He has had a hand in just about every aspect of the NASA program, from the space shuttle to the space station's robotic arm, and I got to meet him, which was pretty cool. Jerry Woodfill is the second picture there in the middle. He was the engineer in charge of the failure warning systems for the Apollo 11 and 13 missions. He was a student at Rice University when President Kennedy gave his famous speech, "Failure is not an option." Jerry Woodfill actually gave me this bracelet. It says, "Failure is not an option." During Apollo 13, Jerry Woodfill's failure management systems actually started to give off their warning signs. And at first, Jerry, he told us his story. He said at first, he was like, "Oh no, my warning systems aren't working. Something's going wrong." But then as he looked into it, they were actually doing what they were supposed to do and warning mission control and the astronauts that something was wrong on the Apollo capsule. And so they were able to fix that problem. If you look in Apollo Mission Control above the water fountain, you will see a plaque given to Mission Control by the Apollo 13 astronauts. It's a mirror, and under the mirror, it says "The True Heroes of Spaceflight." Mission Control. Apollo Mission Control, Space Shuttle Mission Control, the Space Station Mission Control are all in Houston, Texas. Space shuttles were the next manned spacecraft missions. Space shuttles included Enterprise, which never actually flew in space, but it was there to help gain attention to the space shuttles and gain approval of the American people that the space shuttle missions were a good idea. Of course, the space shuttle missions were used to build the International Space Station and only for lower Earth orbit. Columbia was the next one to be built. Challenger, you remember Challenger had the first teacher in space, but unfortunately, the space shuttle had issues on takeoff, and the astronauts did not survive. Columbia also, as it came in for re-entry, had issues, and the astronauts lost their lives on the Columbia as well. Discovery went on the most space shuttle missions. Atlantis was the last space shuttle to fly, and Endeavour was the last space shuttle built. That should have been Adventurer. That's the name I picked for it back in the 6th grade. Let me give you some space shuttle statistics. Let's see if you know this. 21,030 is the number of orbits of Earth that it completed. 3,000 is the scorching hot temperatures in Fahrenheit that the space shuttle experienced. 1,323 is the number of days in space. That's crazy. 789 is the number of astronauts and cosmonauts who have returned to Earth via the space shuttle. 3,135 is the total number of NASA space shuttle missions, and 4 is the number of space shuttle astronauts Mrs.Bright has met. Brian Duffy's in the upper right-hand corner, Shane Kimbrough's in the blue jumpsuit, and David Hilmers is in the blue shirt on the bottom right. And I also met Mike Moulon. We have information and knowledge about the solar system because people are willing to risk their lives for that knowledge. These are the astronauts who actually lost their lives. 3 Apollo mission astronauts, and then we have the crew of Columbia and Challenger. President George Bush, during the Columbia Memorial, said, "This cause of exploration and discovery is not an option we choose. It is a desire written in the human heart." I love that quote because I have that desire to explore the world around me. And I know that these astronauts had that desire as well and were willing to give their lives for that cause. So, Daddy, are we there yet? How long does it really take to get to all the parts of our solar system? So we're going to compare a 757 airplane to the speed of light. So if we were going to go once around the Earth in a 757 airplane, it would take 1.3 days. If we were going to go once around the Earth in the speed of light, it would take 800ths of a second. So if you've ever gone, just to better familiar yourself with the speed of light, if I was to go outside and feel the sun's rays on my cheek so warm, it took exactly 8 minutes for that sun's light to reach my face. That's how fast it took it to travel, which is really, really fast. Now let's look again at our chart. Earth to the moon. In a 757 airplane, it would take 21 days. But if I was going the speed of light, it would take 1 3600ths of a second. Not too shabby. Earth to the sun, 21 years in a 757. I think you might run out of gas. Or the speed of light, 8 3/10 of a minute. Earth to Jupiter would take 90 years. So Jupiter is a lot farther away than our sun. But if I was going the speed of light, it would take me 35 minutes. If we were going to go across the solar system in a 757, it would take 1,700 years across our solar system. But if I was going the speed of light, it would take 11 1/10 hours. So we would be able to explore the world around us much faster if we could figure out how to go the speed of light. Thank you for joining me on part 1 of Earth and Space. We will dance our way through the solar system in part 2, starting with our star, the sun. I will see you soon. Bye.